What's up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Before I dive into today's case, I quickly want to thank Audible for sponsoring today's video. You guys know how much I love and adore Audible, and if you didn't know that, you've just not watched enough of my videos yet. But if you aren't aware of what Audible is, it is an online treasure chest, basically, of unmatched audiobooks, original audio shows, news, comedy, and more. And I feel like Audible goes really well hand in hand with the new year because we're often making resolutions, we're setting goals, we're kind of pushing out of our comfort zone, we're trying to learn new things. At least that's usually one thing that I aim for every single year. And audiobooks are a great way to do that. You can learn something new, you can kickstart your motivation, reset your thinking. One thing that I personally am very dedicated to this year, one goal that I have, is learning more about forensic psychology, which again, if you've been here for any period of time, you know about me in forensic psychology. I absolutely love it. So right now I'm actually listening to the audiobook Mindhunter, which again should come as no surprise. You guys know how I feel about Robert Ressler and John Douglas. This audiobook in particular showcases how John Douglas himself navigated becoming one of the first criminal profilers, which is mind-boggling to me. And he speaks about his experiences sitting down with some of the most notorious serial killers and their thought process and everything behind them. And I find that so wildly fascinating. With the selection of audiobooks that Audible has, your new goals are covered, whether that's managing money better or just becoming a better person, anything spiritualistic, if you want to be a better parent, if you want to get into fitness, there's going to be something for you. You can listen anytime, anywhere, on any device, so it's also very convenient if you are on the go, in the gym. And to motivate you even more, which this I'm very excited about, Audible is actually issuing a challenge to new and current members. If you finish 3 audiobooks by March 3rd, from now until March 3rd, you will get a $20 Amazon credit. You don't have to worry about keeping track of it. Audible will keep track of all the books you finished for you. It's literally as simple as sitting down, picking 3 things you're interested in, getting those audiobooks, and going. If you happen to get an audiobook that you're not exactly pleased with, or it's not exactly what you thought it would be, there's also a really easy exchange process. And on top of that, all of the books that you get in your library, you keep forever, even if you cancel. All you have to do to become a member of Audible and participate in this challenge with me is go to www.audible.com/Danielle or text Danielle to 500 and you can start listening with an exclusive 30-day free trial. And not just that, you guys will also get 1 free audiobook and your choice of 2 Audible originals absolutely free. So I will have everything linked down below, or again, you can go to www.audible.com/Danielle or text Danielle to 500. Thank you again to Audible, as always, for sponsoring today's video. So now let's go ahead and jump right into today's case. And that is the disappearance of Kortne Stouffer. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is a lot like a lot of the cases that I've covered lately where there's just not a lot of evidence, if any. So that means that this is a case that is just running rampant online with theories. I have seen all sorts of crazy things, and I just want to talk to those of you that end up going to research after this on forums and things like that. Be very careful the things that you say. Be very careful what you say down in the comments below. Right now on the Facebook page, I kind of noticed this trend of them trying to encourage people away from really making a lot of theories, and the biggest push is towards getting someone in the public with information to come forward, because again, this case does not have a lot of evidence, and at this point, this happened in 2012. I'll obviously get into the details in a minute. Evidence just popping up now is not very likely, so they're really just trying to push the story out there and have people share it with whoever they can, so maybe the right person can come forward. So now that I have that out of the way, let's just go ahead and get into it. Kortne was a special girl from birth. When I say she was a ball of fire and full of energy, tons of drive and passion, that is not an exaggeration. She was the kind of person that if she set her mind to it, she was going to accomplish it. She always wanted to be the center of attention, and she thrived there, whether that was in different competitions she was in during sports, or whether she was showing animals that she raised on her family farm at 4-H competitions. She just went hard at everything she did. She wanted to be the best. She wanted to understand. She wanted to push herself and then encourage those around her. She was just such an interesting and well-rounded person. She wasn't fitting into one box. She wanted to try absolutely everything. She could go from singing on a stage and impressing everyone with her voice to fishing and rolling around in the mud with her 5 siblings that she lived with. And that was another huge thing in her life, her family. She was so close to her family. She never failed to miss any family event, period. No matter how small or how big it was, she was there. And then even when her parents ended up getting divorced, and I believe 2005 is the year, the family bond kind of remained as it always had. They were just instilled with this idea of you care about the people around you, you look out for each other, and the children in the family were always top priority. Now, once Kortne graduated from high school, she wanted to spend a little bit of time figuring out what she wanted to do before she just blindly threw herself into school or some sort of career. And in the meantime, she took a job working for her dad for a little bit. And then finally, she decided she wanted to go into the beauty industry. She wanted to go into cosmetology. And after earning her license, she ended up working beside her mom, who was also a cosmetologist and a salon. But there was something else that had always been important to her that was really, really calling her name. Animals had always been a huge part of her life. As I said before, she grew up on a farm. She raised goats. She raised all sorts of animals. And her best friend in all of life was her dog, Sheba. She got Sheba when she was 8 years old, and they were inseparable from that point on. So Kortne decided she wanted to go ahead and take her cosmetology skills and become a groomer. And in this point in time, she kind of experienced a very large shift in her life. I don't know if anything in particular really triggered it or if it was just her age. She was 20 at this point, about to turn 21, and she seemed to be really finding herself and figuring out what she liked, her interests, and she started to be described as a flower child, a hippie. She'd always been kind of preppy, cheerleader, but would still get dirty and crazy, but now she was just kind of a wild flower child. She got a couple of tattoos. She loved peace signs and headscarves and long flowy dresses. One of her tattoos said "One Love" on it. So she changed up her appearance a little bit. She made some new friends. And during all of this, she ended up meeting 19-year-old Brad. And this was her first love. She fell head over heels for Brad. Her mom, Wendy, said that she'd never seen Kortne feel like this about anyone, and so it wasn't really surprising when 9 months after dating him, Brad and Kortne decide to move in together to a second-floor apartment in the 800 block of West Main Street in Palmyra. And this was so exciting for Kortne. If you think about what she was going through at this point in her life, she was about to turn 21. She was actually able to bring Sheba, her best friend, to this apartment. She started a job that she was very, very passionate about. She had a new boyfriend. It was exciting. So life was just rolling for her in such a positive direction. Now, while experiencing this new freedom, Kortne did what a lot of people her age do, which is have a ton of fun. She would basically host house parties quite often. She would have lots of people over, and while this was great for her and she was having the time of her life, it was creating a few issues for her as well. Her neighbors were not very fond of these house parties at all, and it ended up ending very badly the night of July 28th, 2012, which is just a few hours before she was last seen. The night of July 28th, 2012, Kortne and Brad had people over, but the neighbors basically had enough, especially because they knew something about Brad. Brad was on probation at this time. He had charges for driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs while underage. At this point, he was still only 20, obviously still on probation, and one of the neighbors decided to call the cops. When the probation officers and police showed up, they did find alcohol within the residence, and because of this, they arrested Brad. Now, this sent Kortne into an absolute panic. Obviously, she was under the impression that because he violated his probation, he had to spend the rest of his time in jail, which would have been, I believe, 4 years. And they had just moved in together. She had really just started dating him. It felt so chaotic for her. But on top of that, she was pissed. She was infuriated that her neighbors would do this to her. So she ended up calling her mom at about 9:54 p.m. that night, and she was very obviously upset. She explained to her mom the situation, that she was pissed off at her neighbors, that she felt like this was all unfair, and her mom offered, you can come stay at my house if you don't want to be alone, if you need to be with someone and kind of calm down. But Kortne insisted that she was okay and she would figure herself out, which she kind of did. As soon as she got off the phone with her mom, she ended up getting in contact with an older friend of hers. I believe he was 29 years old, and his name is Cody Pruitt. Now, she apparently knew Cody through a local horse racetrack that was nearby. He was a farrier there. I don't know how she met him. I've seen online answers all across the board, but usually on forums, so they're probably all rumors. I've seen that she knew him just from grooming there. I've seen that she knew him through Brad. Honestly, I don't have a straight answer, but either way, they ended up meeting at a place called the Gas Station, which was a bar about 10 minutes, I believe, away from her home. They met there and had a few drinks, and they ended up meeting up with Cody's friend Milton Rodriguez and another couple. Now, from there, they decided to get into Milton's car with Cody as the designated driver, and they drove all the way to Harrisburg. Harrisburg is widely known for partying. A lot of young adults like to go there, specifically to 2nd Street, which is where this whole group ended up. There's lots of bars, lots of things to do, so this is exactly where they headed. And at this point, Kortne was heavily intoxicated. And I think she was trying very, very hard to probably distract herself from what had happened to her earlier in the night and having to see her boyfriend be arrested. She was probably trying to distract herself from all of the steps coming forward because she was so uncertain about what was going to happen to him. So she was just pounding back the drinks, and being in her intoxicated, angry state, she ended up getting into an argument with another male at the bar. I do not believe this male came with him. I think he just so happened to be there, but she accused him of breaking into her home or having someone break into her home to steal money. Now, she was an acquaintance of this man, so it's not like she just went up to a stranger, but this was not a friend of hers. This was just someone that she kind of knew. The argument ended up getting so heated that security came over and escorted Kortne out of the building, and her friends did not follow. And keep in mind, they're the ones that brought her there. They knew they were the ones driving. Cody was the designated driver. It was Milton's car. She was in a completely different city. So I find it interesting that they didn't follow her. She ended up having to text Cody and be like, look, I just got thrown out. I can't come back in there. You're my ride. You need to come and take me home. So eventually, after confronting them and telling them, come on, come out here, Cody, Milton, and Kortne piled into the car and headed back home. Now, the very first step was dropping Milton off back at home, and then Kortne convinced Cody that she was sober enough to drive herself back home. So after dropping Milton off, they went back to the gas station where she had left her car parked, and she got in the car to head home. Now, apparently Cody was not 100% certain she was sober enough to drive home on her own. So instead of stopping her from getting in the car, he decided to just follow behind her just in case. But at this point, the night was so very far from being over. When they got back to her apartment, it was around 3 in the morning, and a few of the neighbors were outside drinking together. And Kortne, overcome with anger towards the situation, lashed out on them for real. So ultimately, the cops ended up being called at around 3:30 a.m. by the couple that lived below Kortne, and they were all a part of this argument, if I'm not mistaken. So at this point, this is the second time that cops have been called out to this location for a disturbance, and that typically does not make police very happy when they have to repeatedly come out to a residence. So when they got there, they were irritated. They told everyone they needed to get themselves together. They all needed to separate, go into their own homes, and leave each other alone for the rest of the night. And they said that if they had to come back out there again, somebody, period, was getting arrested. So all of the neighbors kind of calmed down a little bit, split up, went to their own homes, and Cody decided to go ahead and escort Kortne inside himself. But things didn't remain calm. Immediately after the police left, Kortne apparently was throwing a fit. She was not happy. She was stomping, she was screaming, yelling, slamming things. And by 4 a.m., Kortne's single male neighbor that lived across from her or right beside her, he decided he'd had enough and called the cops again. He said that he explained to them that it was ridiculous how she was acting, that she was stomping, yelling, she was uncontrollable. He could hear it from his apartment. He could only imagine what the downstairs neighbors were hearing, and he was done with it and wanted the cops to come out and take care of it. Authorities, for the third time, responded to the scene, but by the time they got there, things had completely calmed down. All of the lights were off. There was no sound, nobody was yelling, stomping, no one was even talking. So they decided to knock on a few of the doors of the neighbors that had been involved, and when nobody answered, they figured that everyone had just kind of settled their differences and probably drunkenly passed out, so they went ahead and left. The following day, Kortne's family had no idea what had happened. It was actually an exciting day for them because it was the day of the local county fair, I believe. And Kortne and her brother had always gone to this together. It was kind of a tradition for them. Again, they raised animals. This is usually where all the 4-H competitions are held, and it was something they did together from the ages of 6 and 8 and up. So everyone kind of assumed that's where she was going to be that day. And again, she's an adult. She's living on her own now, so no one's constantly keeping tabs on her. Now, her mom did text her and call her a few times that Sunday, which again was the 29th, but she received no answer. Again, not a huge worry at first because she probably was at the fair having a good time. But then either later that night or early morning on Monday, I wasn't able to 100% get an answer on that. I've seen both. Kortne's mom, Wendy, decided to go ahead and call her brother to just make sure, because Kortne still wasn't answering anybody's phone calls or text messages, and Kortne's brother said that she never showed up to the fair. Now, rewind back to where I say that Kortne did not miss a thing. Her family meant everything to her. She was at her little brother's birth. Like, she showed up to everything. She made sure she had 2 meals with her family at least once a month, even when she was living by herself. She would not have missed this. And if she had, she would have been very upset about it, very apologetic, but no one heard from her at all. At this point, red flag goes up. There is something very wrong here. So Wendy decided to drive to Kortne's apartment to figure out what was going on, and she walked herself into about 1 million other red flags. When she arrived, Kortne's car was parked outside, so first off, you'd assume that means Kortne's there, or possibly a friend took her out for just a minute. But all of Kortne's windows were down, which wasn't too odd, but it was just something that I wanted to make sure I did note, just in case that could potentially mean something to someone. And then when she got to Kortne's apartment, the door was unlocked. And then from there, everything really rapidly started going downhill. When she opened the door, Sheba greeted her immediately, but Sheba's temperament seemed a little bit off. She seemed a little bit worked up and stressed out, like overly excited to see someone. And when Wendy looked over, she saw that Sheba had had an accident on the floor. And keep in mind, Kortne had Sheba since she was 8. She's now 21 years old. This dog is older, but very well trained. Kortne took great care of this dog. An accident on the floor meant this dog had not been taken out for a long time, which was uncharacteristic of both the dog and Kortne. And then after that, she also realized that Kortne's TV was still on, so was her AC. She left her shoes right there that she always wore. Her keys were still in the apartment. Her purse was still in the apartment. And then the one thing that really sent Wendy over the edge was that Kortne's phone was plugged in beside her bed with 18 missed phone calls. But despite all of Kortne's most important things being within this apartment, Kortne was nowhere to be found. Wendy decided to call Scott, Kortne's father, to come and basically set up camp at Kortne's apartment with her, because they obviously couldn't get in contact with her easily because her phone had been left behind, and they wanted to stay there in case she came back and to kind of search for more clues. Now, the first thing Scott obviously did was go through Kortne's phone, because that would be able to tell him at least the last person that she was in communication with, and that's when he learned about Cody, which apparently is someone that he had never even heard of before. So he was at least definitely one of Kortne's newer friends. When he got in contact with Cody, this was when Wendy and Scott really realized exactly what had happened with their daughter the night before. They found out all about the multiple times authorities showed up at the apartment, the fight with the neighbors, all of that, and they also found out the last things that Cody remembered happening and what happened after he took Kortne up to the apartment. So when Cody brought Kortne up to the apartment, again, she was still visibly enraged. He said that he was trying to calm her down, but she was just stomping and screaming. And he said when the police arrived the third time, they kind of panicked and turned the lights off and went to bed. He said he immediately fell asleep and he assumed that Kortne did as well, but he couldn't say she did for a fact. Cody claims he woke up at around 7:30 a.m., so literally just a few hours later, and she was no longer in bed anymore. He said that he had to head to the racetrack to do his farrier work. He had an appointment, so he decided to just kind of scream out to Kortne, say that he was leaving, and then he headed out. He claimed that after this, he took Milton's car to a local convenience store to grab some things, and while he was there, he called Milton to try to figure out how to get his car back to him, and he also texted and called Kortne a few times just to make sure she was okay. And from what I have seen, Scott himself did read text messages from Cody to Kortne asking if she was okay at the time frame that this would have matched up with, so we at least know that the texts that he sent were real. Obviously, still doesn't make sense that Kortne got up between 4 a.m. and 7:30 and just vanished without taking anything with her. Later that day, after reaching out to pretty much anyone and everyone that could be in contact with Kortne and receiving absolutely no answers, her parents decided to call police. But given the situation, her being 21, her being mad that her boyfriend was arrested, all of the events of the night, they said it was possible that she was just off blowing off steam, and they said to wait till the following day, which at this point is Tuesday. By the time Tuesday rolled around, Kortne still had not come home. No one had heard from her, so she was formally reported as a missing person, and everyone jumped to action. Authorities sealed off Kortne's apartment, and they brought in all sorts of forensic teams to search for any sign at all of foul play. They also decided to check CCTV footage and make sure that Cody was where he said he was, because he was the last person known to be with her, and they were in fact able to place him at the convenience store at the time he said, and they were able to see him making phone calls and texts. And between that and then the text on Kortne's phone, everything matched up. They also spoke to the couple that lived below Kortne, but they said that after the very last incident where she was stomping and screaming after authorities left, after that they said they didn't hear a single other thing. Now, while all of this was going on and authorities were trying to figure out how on earth this young woman managed to just vanish off the face of the earth, Kortne's parents started to get a gut feeling about another one of the neighbors. The single male neighbor that was the last one to call authorities on Kortne that early morning. Now, Kortne had already complained a lot about this neighbor to a lot of different people, one of those people being her mom. She said that he had always caused problems. They were kind of at each other constantly. They found reasons to get on one another. She thought he was very, very creepy and that he would stare at her funny and make her feel uncomfortable. And then just a week prior to her disappearance, she called her mom and said, "He's videotaping me." Like, she was sitting out on the front porch, relaxing on her own, and he just started to videotape her. Now that in itself is weird, but the second that her parents showed up at the apartment, he also started kind of acting a little bit strange. When her parents asked this neighbor if he had seen or heard anything strange regarding Kortne that weekend, he said that he knew nothing about her and what she did that weekend and all of that, despite the fact that he had been in an altercation with her, a verbal one, literally just days before. And then he also wouldn't look them in the eyes, but he at the same time still seemed overly interested in what they were doing. And then the straw that really broke the camel's back was when he started to repeatedly leave his home. And what he would do is he would come out with a half-filled black trash bag. He would put said trash bag in his car, be gone for a little bit, and then come back, and then he would do it again. And Kortne's mom, Wendy, said that he did this at least 6 times. So they decided to bring this information to authorities, and police began to look into the idea that he could be involved. Because if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Disgruntled neighbor, this man had been the last person to call 911, angry about her right before she disappeared. And to top it off, they ended up being led straight to a voicemail that he left the landlady to all of these apartments the night that Kortne went missing. Now, in this voicemail, he told the landlady that Kortne was a huge issue and that the landlady needed to take care of Kortne and kick her out. And if the landlady didn't do it, he said he was going to take care of her himself. This pretty much was a threat, obviously. When police spoke to this man, he denied ever filming Kortne or any of the things that Kortne's parents claimed. He denied having any involvement at all in her disappearance. He chalked the voicemail up to him just being very frustrated with the situation. And he also said that all of these trash bags that he was taking were from a home renovation project. Now, authorities weren't fully buying this, so they went to obtain a warrant for his home and his vehicle. They searched everything. They brought in dogs. I've seen that they searched his trash, and I don't know if that means they searched just the trash that was left at his home or if they figured out where he took all of those different bags of trash during the day. But either way, after all of this, there was no evidence at all connecting him to any foul play in regards to Kortne. The other neighbors' apartments were also searched, as well as their vehicles, but no evidence of foul play was ever found, not even in Kortne's own apartment. After all of the forensic teams that came in and analyzed the entire scene, they couldn't find anything. There was no blood, nothing out of place. There wasn't even a sign of a struggle. Because the angry neighbors didn't turn up any leads, they decided to zone in on the people that Kortne was last known to be with. Again, that's pretty common. And these people were Cody and Milton. Both of their homes were fully searched. Authorities did obtain a warrant. They also searched both of their vehicles, and both men were questioned thoroughly. Cody kept the same story every single time, according to all of the sources that I have read. I personally have no idea what Milton said. There's not been a lot of information on him at all. I do know that Scott, Kortne's father, has said that when he was questioned, he acted a little bit strange. He seemed nervous and gave very vague answers. Now, does that necessarily mean he's guilty of something? Or is he just very nervous because he feels thrown into the middle of something that he was not a part of? I can't say, but either way, both of them apparently checked out. There was, again, no evidence found in the homes or the cars. And I also know that a lot of these people that were involved were given polygraphs. Take that with a grain of salt. But either way, I don't know the answers, the conclusions of these polygraphs, because authorities have not released them, which is something that I do find interesting. Authorities also found the man that Kortne argued with in the bar that night in Harrisburg. They found out that he's actually an alleged drug dealer. And this kind of opened up a whole new world of possibilities because Kortne did smoke weed. This is something that her friends knew, her family knew. There is a possibility that she could have been doing other kinds of drugs, but no one else knew if she was for a fact. But either way, this man did have an alibi and completely checked out. Now, everything was leading to dead ends, obviously, as you've seen. So Kortne's family decided to do everything they could in their power to just keep Kortne's name out there. They originally just put up a $5,000 reward for any information leading to her whereabouts, and that number has since climbed to $100,000. And then with the help of friends and family, they endlessly put up missing person posters all around the local community. And now they actually send out bumper stickers and other posters to get a further reach. They've put up billboards. They have held vigils. Every year they get together to light lanterns for her age and kind of keep her name going. A huge search was also done shortly after her disappearance, and it expanded a 2-mile radius around her apartment. And what's so crazy about this is that the people holding the search asked the public to come and help, because that's a decent amount of area to be searching, especially when you're searching methodically. But so many people turned up to try to help find Kortne and look for answers that they actually had to turn people away, because they needed to not compromise the land, compromise any evidence, and they just didn't have enough for the amount of people that showed up, which is absolutely insane. But eventually leads started to slow down, and without any solid evidence, quite literally at all, at least not that authorities have released, there wasn't a strong direction to go in. And then in 2014, one of the biggest tips came in, a possible tip from someone local, a woman named Amanda. Now, Amanda ended up reaching out to Scott and Wendy to say that she overheard a conversation about what happened to Kortne. Amanda met with them and spoke to them for a total of 3 hours, and she claimed that 2 men said they broke into Kortne's home in order to steal marijuana and money, and they ended up killing her. And to dispose of her, they wrapped her up in a carpet and they threw her into Memorial Lake, which is a very, very large lake nearby. Now, these are all of the details I know of that she told them and that have been released. Obviously, I'm sure there's more. This was a 3-hour conversation. But the reason I think she contacted the family directly is because she apparently contacted authorities about this 3 separate times over a year. Now, authorities said that they didn't put too much credibility into what she was saying because, and they claim, and I have no proof of this, that she changed her story every single time. And so obviously when someone does that, paired with the fact that it's secondhand information that someone's saying they overheard, they had to be very careful about where they put their resources. But once the family really pushed to have this looked into, they did end up taking sonar and an unmanned sub to Memorial Lake to do a search. Now, they searched for about 5 hours and finally concluded that it wasn't very likely that Kortne was anywhere in this lake after their search. A lot of people did seem upset about this because it didn't seem like a very long time to search such a large body of water, and the depths got to about 21 or 22 feet, I believe. And so I know that divers did end up going back, but I don't know if that was almost a volunteer situation or if authorities sent the diver back. All I know is that the results were the same, that nothing was found. Finally, in 2015, the family decided to hire a private investigator that has been working on this case for the past few years. And this is kind of, again, as I've already said in the beginning of this video, the one big thing that I think is going to make a huge difference in this case. Everyone's working together. The family is incredible. The way that they speak about her and the disappeared documentary that I will have the name of down below. I think it's Spirited Away, actually. Season 8, episode 3. I don't know if I'm right. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, though. But they're very aware that, you know, she was involved in a lot of stuff that could have had a bad outcome. And they're very honest about everything and very open about everything and very understanding. And then in turn, I think that makes authorities' job a lot easier when it comes to knowing everything about her to open up every possibility instead of kind of keeping a lot of things private. And then on top of that, the PI is also working really hard with the family, and it seems like she's also very well aware she can get much more information than authorities can given her stance. So it just gives me so much hope to see everyone working so hard together towards the same goal, because unfortunately I feel like we just don't see that enough. This kind of brings me to the theories, and I don't want to spend too much time in theories because there's just so many of them online, and so many of them are so absurd and just really big stretches. It's like people are trying to make a game out of this, so I'm going to be very, very careful with this as much as I can. A lot of people believe that Cody was involved, despite the fact that he kept his story repeatedly. He's taken a polygraph, but again, we don't know the details of that. But a lot of people think it's odd because he's the last person known to have been with her alone, and he kind of follows a very strange pattern that night. If you think about it, his pattern of behavior is a little bit weird. He goes to the extent of meeting her to help distract her from her problems of the night, takes her to a few bars, he, DDs, to all of a sudden he's okay with her being thrown out of a bar alone and not following her out to help her, knowing he's her sole ride from one city to another, to then being concerned enough again to follow her all the way from her car where it was parked at the gas station to her apartment, but then flips again in the morning to not being concerned at all that he woke up to her gone. It seems like very flip-floppy. It's like he overly cares at one point and then he doesn't care at all, and then it just goes back and forth, and it's very strange to me. And on top of that, it's a very small apartment. He would have woken up. Her phone was very obviously placed beside the bed, seeing her purse and keys still there. You know, I understand maybe wanting to give her privacy or thinking maybe she's in the bathroom or something, but it would have taken all of like 10 seconds to probably search the entire apartment. When you know someone's been through what they went through, what she went through that night into the early morning, and you were so concerned about her safety, why would you all of a sudden just not be that concerned when she's gone? And then if you didn't think she was in the apartment and you walked out and saw her car there, I just feel like something's very off about that. A lot of people speculate that the noise coming from the apartment the third time authorities were called was actually from her being attacked. But again, that's just speculation, pure speculation. Keep that in mind. I will say, though, that it does seem very, very odd that she went from flipping out to complete and utter silence that even her neighbors can attest to. It just seems strange. It leads to the idea of someone possibly already being in her apartment waiting for her, or someone maybe showing up to cause problems. But again, in this case, I don't see how that would be possible unless Cody was somehow involved in it. Or maybe he went to sleep really quickly and someone knocked on the door, and because she was angry and thinking a lot, she didn't go to sleep. But even then, that doesn't seem likely because she was in a feisty mood, you guys. She was ready to take down anyone and everyone that night. If someone came to her door to cause problems, she would have been loud about it. The dog probably would have started flipping out, which means Cody would have probably woken up, and the neighbors who were already on edge would have woken up, but somehow no one heard anything. Wherever she may have gone, it wasn't far, or she wouldn't have left every single thing behind her. Was it maybe to answer the door, but somehow whoever came with bad intentions managed to so quietly get her away that nobody noticed? Or did she go to finish her argument with a neighbor and, no evidence was left behind at all for authorities to find? Or was she just very upset still and just needed to get out of her head for a minute, so she went outside to take a walk? If she's a hippie, she's gonna have no problem walking outside without her shoes, her phone, anything. She maybe just needed to ground herself. And in that case, a young woman drunk walking by herself at 4-something in the morning can easily fall a victim to a circumstantial crime. So as you can see, theories are kind of all over the board, and they're basically just all everyone's best guesses as to what could have possibly happened to her. Either way, foul play is believed to be involved. She did not just vanish. Out of all things she left behind, the one thing that she would never ever leave behind is Sheba. And if foul play was involved, that means that there is someone out there that knows exactly what happened to her. And that person may have told someone else, or someone else might have heard something, or might know that someone around them was acting strange during that time period, that early morning into the following day. Like I said, the chances of more evidence at this point being randomly stirred up are just not as likely as someone from the public that knows something coming forward. So that's really what authorities and her family are relying on. There's still a reward of $100,000 available. I have all of the different contact information down below for you to get in contact with the right person. They're trying to follow up every tip and lead. I cannot imagine how frustrating it is for authorities and her family, because there's just no angle to look at this in a way that makes any sense, that leads towards any conclusions or answers. It's just a bunch of guesses based on very vague information, a very wide time frame, and a million different scenarios. So I hope her family eventually gets answers and she comes back home. I have literally all the faith in the world at this point, because there are a lot of really great people working on solving this case. But that's all I have for you guys today. Again, all contact information possible is listed down below, as well as my sources. sources. I've been trying to organize my sources a little bit differently for you guys that are interested in researching things on your own after the fact. I'm trying to do a lot of really small changes to my channel. I already kind of spoke about this in my last video. So let me know how you guys like the way I've organized my sources now. It makes it a lot easier. If you're someone that likes to research with articles, I kind of have that in its own little section. If you prefer like podcasts or videos, everything like that, it's just sorted a lot differently. So again, let me know. Please make sure you share this story and her missing persons poster everywhere. There is a website for her that is linked down below as well that you guys can, I'm pretty sure, donate to. You can get the PDF of her missing persons poster there. So yeah, please do anything that you can to help find Kortne. On that note, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Kortne's story. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below so you can become a part of the Hallan fam so we can hopefully bring them home together. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.